Hello, I am Samantha Wendt, and I am, I don't like going by titles, but if you had to shorten me up some way or form, I am the sugar addiction expert that you didn't know you needed. That's me in a nutshell. I will get into the show notes exactly where I'm on with social media, but I am on Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn, Instagram. I'm a lot of places.
She is everywhere, everyone. So please, once we have the information, once she gets it out, follow her because sugar is something that is so addictive, so crazy. And it is, there's this joke, right? Like in Canada, we have something, there's a slogan like City TV, it's everywhere, right? Like it's the slogan of the channel. So it's like
It
sugar, it's everywhere.
it is everywhere. In our grocery stores here in the United States, at least 80% of the grocery store has added sugar to it.
Is
So
that like
that's
in all the foods or just like in the actual store itself?
in the grocery store, there's with all the foods in the grocery store, 80% of those food items have added sugar to them.
Wow. So actually, let me ask you this then. If How did you get started in doing this and what was your reason why? Because we hear about sugar all the time, but we don't hear about people actually talking about sugar all the time. So what got you started into this?
Well, I we're gonna go way back here for a little bit. As a child, I was bullied, I was harassed. Um, then I got into the wrong boyfriends and was sexually abused, emotionally abused, one of them even physically abused. So I had a lot of trauma in my childhood. I think that, and in part of one time in high school, I was having a chicken sandwich and the middle of it was raw. And so I brought it up to the lunch ladies, and the lunch ladies are like, no, it's perfectly fine to eat. And I'm like, no. And so they basically banned me from eating any chicken products. I took that a step further and did not want anything from the lunch line. So I went to the snack bar every single day for lunch instead of bringing my own lunch. Rebellious child, figuring nothing could happen to me, right? Well, I had met my husband when I was 18, married when I was 20, and by the time I was in my mid 20s, I was the queen to the three king size candy bars, plus all the sweet treats, all the sweet drinks. I was worshiping sugar more than I was worshiping Jesus. It was a bad spot. I was 240 pounds at least. I couldn't do a flight of stairs. I couldn't pretty much do anything a mid 20-year-old could do. And that included having children. The conventional medicine in 2010 basically looked at me and said, you have restless leg syndrome. There is nothing, here's a pill. Have a nice day. Now, mind you, they never looked into the lifestyle. They never looked into what I was eating, how I was sleeping, any of the basic factors that you would think, in general, you would think about when you're thinking of your health. And so in 2011, I started seeing a naturopathic doctor. And after his testing, he looked at me and he's like, Samantha, I'm going to give it to you straight. If you do not change the way that you are eating, the way that you're living your life, at best, by the time you're 30, you will be a vegetable in a nursing home. At worst, you'll be 6 feet under. What? Excuse me? That got me like on the edge of the chair going, did you just say that sugar is basically killing me? And pretty much was. My organs at that point were starting to shut down. And so I started his supplements and his meal plan for me. Within the first year, I eradicated 80 pounds. I had a miscarriage, which was the sad part. But then I had a viable pregnancy. And then the following year later, I had another viable pregnancy. They're 362 days apart from each other. Not our plan, but his plan. Um, so having the two littles in this time frame, I was also by the conventional medicine was diagnosed with chronic Lyme disease, which they put me on heavy antibiotics and that ruined the gut. So it was kind of sending me back into the spiral of my sugar addiction. And God was like, Samantha, this ain't happening. And the end of January 2016, my oldest and I were involved in a motor vehicle accident. The wonderful conventional medicine. They, we were taken to the ER via ambulance, never neck brace, never backboarded. And the conventional medicine doctor, he looked us over, never did any imaging, no concussion protocol. And they basically said, you got some bumps, bruises, maybe some sprains. Have a nice day. Within the first month, they got diagnosis of two partial torn tendons in my right rotator cuff area, and they got stuck there. It was 8 hellish months of vertigo, dizziness, migraines, and my kids were under the age of 3, so 2 under the age of 3, prime screaming, being big, loud, spinning around years, and I couldn't take it. I mean, I was doing everything that I could, but those were some very dark days. I saw a neurologist, and this was almost 8 months after the accident. He looked at me and he said, you're smiling. There is absolutely nothing wrong with you. It's just in your head. Have a nice day. So I sought a second opinion. And the second neurologist, she looked at me and she's like, well, it is in your head. You have a concussion, had it for 8 months. So now it's post-concussion syndrome. And the list of like 5 pages long is what it seemed like. So I did her treatment plan and it wasn't getting any better. So they diagnosed me with chronic post-concussion syndrome with a very slim chance of ever healing the concussion. So I basically have concussion symptoms the rest of my life. Then the end of March, early April came the diagnosis of celiac and multiple food intolerances that later turned to food allergies. And then May, the wonderful conventional medicine doctor, he looked at me. He's like, you're as good as you're going to get. You're going to be sitting on your butt in a chair taking pain meds the rest of your life. Now, remind you, he just diagnosed me a month earlier with celiac and multiple food intolerances. And most of our prescription meds, over-the-counter meds, could contain wheat, dairy, and corn, 3 of which I could not have anymore. So that was very interesting. And then by the time September came around of 2017, my right hand ceased to work, to which I pushed to see a hand specialist who finally did an MRI. And a week after the MRI, I was rushed into surgery because I had broken my hand 21 months prior in that accident.
Let me ask you something, Samantha, as you're sharing that. You're hearing all of, because I'm guessing these are different doctors. Some of them sound like they're the same, right?
Yeah.
You're being told this, doctor number 1, doctor number 2, doctor number 3. At what point, if you reach this point, do you look back? Because I hear it in your voice, and you say that, are they ever going to get this right? And am I ever going to get better?
It really did hit, especially after the hand surgery, because my right hand is now disconfigured by standard looking, because the thumb, I can't really give you a thumbs up straight like the left. We decided to go curved so I could open up the jars. The back or the ring finger and the pinky finger are fused together just above the wrist joint. But I try and look for the blessings in all the trauma. My main scar on the back of my right hand is in the letter of a J. My youngest has told me, Mommy, you're marked by Jesus. So with that, a little bit more of a trauma before we start like getting into the healing process was my naturopathic doctor passed away in April of 2020, not due to what was going around. He was in his 70s and his heart just gave out. But with that being said, that spiraled me down the whole, well, crap, what do I do for myself? What do I do for my family? And then out of thin air, the magical question, how can I help somebody else? Because I do not want anybody else to suffer the way that I have suffered with conventional medicine. And so September 28th came around and I embarked on a 16-week journey. And on the 5-year anniversary of the motor vehicle accident, I finished up schooling and shortly after was awarded the certificate of a master herbalist. Um, so with that, that was 2020 time frame. I opened up my business in March of 2021, and then end of September 2021, one of my instructors from the Master Herbalist course, she's like, Samantha, I have a webinar that I would love you to be a part of. All it's going to cost you is just some time. Whether you jump aboard or not, that's up to you. And the webinar that I joined was the founder of Shape Reclaim, which is a nationwide program. And he was discussing about how you could be a practitioner or just jump on the program yourself. I went head over heels and I did it all. I became a Shape Reclaim practitioner, and I'm also on the Shape Reclaim program, which that program like was a catapult to my healing after the motor vehicle accident. Because I also had a facial analysis done. So the Shape Reclaim program is all about eradicating the chronic inflammation, gently detoxing the body, which then helps gently boost the immune system. And for some, it has the added bonus of eradicating excess weight. The facial analysis stuff is just reading a person's face, seeing what could be out of balance with the body. It's not a diagnosis tool, but then it also gives a glimpse into their personality. And so I can be able to tell them either gently or like give them book worth. I know just by reading the face how to approach my clients that way. But the founder of Shape Reclaim, he's got the modality WTF, why the face? So I was so intrigued by what he had found with myself, not knowing me, that I, went head over heels and learned from him before the certificate program came out. But with being on the supplements, for what he found, plus the Shape Reclaim program, which is a nutritional supplement, along with a anti-inflammatory type meal plan. Within 5 months of that program, while having my chronic post-concussion syndrome and still healing from the hand surgery, I became an American Red Cross lifeguard. Within 5 months. Now, to this day, June of 2024, I saw my neurologist again for a different issue, but she brought up the chronic post-concussion stuff and she looked at me. She's like, Samantha, I do not know what you're doing, but you have healed your chronic post-concussion syndrome. I'm like, I'm just using holistic matters and finding the right foods and the supplements and working on my spiritual health. She's like, well, whatever you're doing, keep going because you've healed your traumatic brain injury.
Congratulations, Samantha.
Thank you.
You're like, I know, I spoke to, because I know you and I, when we were trying to organize this and plan this, I spoke to a few people who have overcome weight issues and medical issues. And one thing that they've always shared with me, like you shared earlier, was that there is some trauma that they were experiencing growing up. But one thing that seems to be common is that there was a moment in their life where, similar to what you just shared, where they're like, you know what? I need to take matters into my own hands.
Yes.
I can't rely on anyone else. That could be doctors, it could be family, it could be friends, it could be the world. It could just say, okay, you know what? I need to believe in me. I need to bet on me, and I need to make sure that I'm moving forward. So as you share that and you look back how far you've come and how much you've overcome to be here with me today, how does that feel to you looking back now?
Looking back, it's still like I'm still in shock that I almost died because of something so sweet. And it's like, how could something so sweet be so deadly? So now it's like I'm on this whole war path of learning about sugar and what it really is. Yes, we do need natural sugar. That would be your fruits and your vegetables. Um, but I'm talking about the added sugar, the sugar that's in all your sweet treats, and it's even you've got the high fructose corn syrup now. Sugar has 50 different names, and then on top of it, it's 8 times more addictive than cocaine is. I call it the legal street drug here in the United States.
Grocery pharmaceuticals.
Yes.
Right?
Yep. So my other little name for sugar lately is because it does tempt you so much. I call sugar, the added sugar demons, because they're all over the place, just tempting you to consume them, and then you just want more, and that whole cycle just continues, just like a drug addiction does. And it's like, oh, when you put the pieces together, it all adds up. I mean, our health here in the United States, since um, sugar was pushed into our foods, our health here has gotten so much worse. Diabetes is on the rise, um, obesity, Alzheimer's. I mean, anything with an itis probably stems from eating sugar. Not a lot of
Yeah.
people think about that.
You're right, because I remember reading about, because I'm in Canada here, so there's a little bit of a difference between the Canadian health and the American health. And I don't mean the healthcare system, just mean like overall obesity, diabetes, and so on, right?
Yeah,
And I was looking at some of the charts there, and I didn't realize that, sorry, you don't realize that the majority of people are overweight, right? And when I mean overweight, ladies and gentlemen, I don't mean 1 pound here. No, I mean like overweight. And then
yeah,
you have obesity, right? And then you have like so many people who are diabetic. So when you when someone like goes to the grocery store, or just remember the last time you guys went to the grocery store, how easy is it for you to navigate around the sweet stuff to go find something that's a little bit healthier, right? Because like when you look at the aisles, it's cleaning, right? So it's like it's like the toiletries, the cleaning products, the kitchen stuff, and then like in the middle, at least in my grocery store, you have like 2 aisles, maybe three, of just sweets,
yeah,
cookies, chips, candy, um, all of this stuff, right? So when you're looking to help people with the sugar and raise awareness, knowing how marketable it is, right? You're feeling kind of low, have a chocolate bar. Your boyfriend left you, have a little candy. Your wife
or
is
have
not
some ice cream.
affectionate. Yeah, or have some ice cream, right? Your wife is not affectionate anymore. Ice cream will always love you. Right? So, how do you try to raise awareness where you're fighting against that type of machine and marketing?
Yeah. Well, sugar is added to so many foods to make them palatable, to be, more edible. And so I really, with my clients, I work on them on how to read the labels. Is it really added sugars, or is there some natural sugars? It's scary when you look at labels, especially in the United States. We have things that are in our food that are banned in other countries. And that should raise a flag right there of what in the world is going on, because if it's banned in other countries as a cancerous type food or XYZ type of ingredient, why are we consuming it here in the United States? I've actually seen some labels from United States versus England, and our ingredients are so long compared to the short list in England. It's like, huh, so to me in the United States, they're just trying to make us sicker so that we rely on the conventional medicine, which then relies on the pharmaceuticals, which then, yeah, the cycle continues. Unless if you've got somebody like me who is willing to stand up and break that cycle. I will preface it with my allergies. I do have an EpiPen, but knock on wood, I've not needed it because I know my body well enough. And part of the master herbalist is I know my herbs well enough that I can be able to help my body and the symptoms before anything goes really bad. So, it's really trying to break down and ask yourself, am I worth it to be able to live for X, Y, and Z? Say you have kids. Am I able to live for my kids and watch them grow up and have their own kids and then have the energy to be able to run around with your grandkids? Or are you willing just to let your body die from the inside out because you're consuming the wrong foods for your body? And that was one of my wake up calls with even my healing journey in general, not outside of the sugar, was, am I wanting to stay alive for my own kids? That was my like clutching moment where it's like, I love my husband, but it's my kids.
Yeah,
Of
I
course,
think you no, I was going to your point, right? I think you have to personalize it. I think what is going to happen is you're going to have to say it in a way that pulls on that person's heartstrings, like you did,
yeah,
right? Like it's because the argument that I hear sometimes is, well, Terrain, eating healthy is so much work,
it is.
right? And I would agree, it is. But once you get into a routine, you begin to realize it's not that it's not a lot of work. Like the work is like anything, right? It's going from this point A to point B. Like that is the work, the journey itself,
Yeah,
right? We weren't born consuming candies, consuming sugar, consuming sweets. So it took us some time to get there. It's going to take us some time to get off. But I think what happens, what some people struggle with that have shared with me, is that they consume these things in like secrecy. It's like a secret, right? Like when they're home, they look to their left, they look to the right, like, okay, let me go get this snack, right? And what some people struggle with is a lot of people, when they're watching TV or they're sitting, they're consuming food,
yep,
right? But they don't notice that when they're out and about, they're not doing it. So
yeah,
do you think that maybe one of the ways they can help someone not only be more active, maybe, and decrease the amount of poor food choices is to spend as much time as possible away from the kitchen, away from the temptation, and keep yourself busy, busy mind, busy person, less bad food. Do you think that would
yeah.
work as well?
Um, for some people, yes. I mean, there is a generational pass down of some of this too. When you're a kid, what were your parents doing? They were probably eating in front of the TV. And so then you pass that down. So it's not only working on your present self, but breaking those generational food stories, the food traumas. I mean, I will admit I do eat some in front of the TV, but I don't bring the whole bag of chips over. I portion myself out, and then that's what I consume. I always make sure that I've got water because a lot of people don't realize that if you are dehydrated, it'll act like hunger. And so if you are actually thirsty, but you're consuming foods and that hunger doesn't go away, a lot of times you keep eating instead of finding that clean water to drink. So that's another thing that I work with my clients is I tell them, hey, if you're hungry, drink a few sips of water first. See how that sets with your body before you go on and be able to grab some food. I also tell my clients don't bring in the junk food into your house. If you don't have it there, you're not tempted to eat it. Now, while I have some junk food in my house, I've got some chips, I make the healthier choice of what chips am I allowing in my house. Because chips can have a lot of different ingredients. I just make sure that they're plain chips. And if I want some sort of sauce, I have to make it myself. That is my hard rules. But my kids, I do have some candy in the house. I'm going to say that. But they are limited to only twice a week to having the candy at most. And it's in our freezer. So it's not right there visible. They actually have hidden it in their freezer space because they've got a separate freezer than I do. So they can be able to take it at their will.
So what happens? So what your clients, I guess, like my question would be, is what do you think are some of the roadblocks that maybe would prevent them from being consistent in that regard?
So what I have seen personally myself, and with my clients is that they don't have the willpower. They don't have a strong why. Why do they want to change their lifestyle? I'm not one that likes to use the word diet, just because when we look at the word diet, it's spelled DIE and then with the T at the end. So you're going to die, right? I mean, that's how I view the word diet is that it's got die in it. So um, that's why I look for, or when I speak over things, words matter with how you're healing. I look at the healthy lifestyle, and healthy, you have the word heal. So we want to be able to heal with our lifestyle and how we're living. And that really starts with a strong why. And yes, your why can change over time, but you got to have that why to be able to pull you out of those hard days where it's like, really want, I'm at the grocery store, I need something quick. But then it's like, oh, no, wait, I remember my why. We're just going to set that down. We're going to go for the cut fruit or something, um, you know, something more healthy instead of just the right when you check out here in the United States, you've got all the candy bars. There's candy bars right on both sides of you. Um, plus we've got the couple of aisles of candy bars too. So it's all over.
It is, it is. And like for me, because I don't eat meat. I used to be a vegan and then I started back to seafood, so that's all I eat. I wasn't a candy eater or I had a lot of sugar. I didn't have a lot of sugar growing up. When we did like Halloween and trick or treating, that's probably the time where I remember having candy just because of the event itself. But sugar, salt, and all that stuff, because it's so out of my system, when it enters my system, I perk up, right? Because
Yep.
it's like this boost of just, and I think some people don't realize how potent it is because
Yeah.
they're getting a daily dose of it almost every day. And for you, like when you went through what you went through and you're helping your customers and you see people who are in your everyday life, because you're right. Like when you go to the checkout, you look at your left, you look at your right. What do you see? You see shelves of candy, right? Because it's
Hmm.
just grab them,
Yep.
right? It doesn't matter how weak you are, how strong you are. Everyone can lift a chocolate bar,
Yeah.
put it into their buggy, right?
Yep.
So where do you think we have to go forward as a society now to make sure that we're as healthy as possible, but I guess more importantly, we have enough willpower to say, today I'm not going to do this, maybe tomorrow, but I'm going to be as balanced as possible when it comes to my health and my sugar intake.
Yeah. Um, so what I feel that we need to do is tell the sugar industry who's actually in charge. The sugar industry thinks that they are in charge right now, and that's why it's in everything from your cereal to your applesauces to your ketchup to even your shampoos and conditioners and so it's everywhere. We need to stop buying those products and show, no, we don't need those anymore. And the fun thing about the transformation from consuming so much added sugar to just having, like, for me, it's just natural fruit. Sometimes I'll do some pure maple syrup or pure honey, is that your taste buds will change over time and you'll start craving the fresh fruits and the vegetables instead of having the added sugar that we were never created to eat. We were created to eat the fruits and the vegetables, the grains. Um, and speaking of grains, we don't even have the same grains that we had 20 years ago. It's that's how much our food industry has been changing. It's scary here in the United States where we're working more away from whole foods and it's becoming lab created. And so people don't fully understand that. And that's another thing that we need to start waking up to is saying, hey, we don't need this processed food, which probably has a ton of sugar in it and whatever chemicals that are wrecking our body. And we need to be able to eat the whole foods so that our bodies can be whole as possible in this world that is full of toxins.
You're right. It's interesting that some people will say that, well, it's been this way for a long time. I was like, not really, because I'm old enough to remember the difference in the foods.
Yeah,
And I think some people will argue that, well, because the population is what it is, we not only need natural growth, but we need something that's created in the lab. And that's perfectly fine if that's truly what their intention is their intention is, okay, no mouth goes unfed. But what are we
yeah,
feeding the people, right? Like, is it that if your options are to go without or to consume something unhealthy, which one truly is the better choice, right? Because they're both a devil in their own way. But
yes,
which one is more long term? Like the first option, if you go without, you can eventually find.
yeah,
The second option, if you're consuming something bad, you get addicted. Not only do you have to come off of that addiction, now you have to find something that is okay for you to consume. So
yeah.
your battle is twofold versus the first choice. It's one. And if it's something that we have to go to the sugar company directly, what are some of the actions that maybe we can do on the ground level, the grassroots, that you think will be beneficial on an individual basis and maybe as a group basis?
Well, I think, the sugar industry is within the government too. It's scary how it's intertwined. We'll go there for a second, but it is intertwined. So it's writing to your politicians, whether it's here in the United States, we've got governors and the Senate and the however it be, write to them and be like, hey, we want healthier foods. We don't want them to be sugar laden. We want them to be real whole foods. However you want to put the letter. But that would be a great start is to get a movement going where we're all writing letters and saying, hey, this needs to change. Because even the other thing is that healthier foods are way more expensive than the junk foods. Why? Why is it so hard to be able to get healthier foods? I know with our food allergies in my house, because both my kids and myself, we have food allergies, and our food prior to the huge inflation was a good 4 times more expensive. And now I want to say it's 10 times more expensive because we're eating the whole foods and it's just crazy where you can find the corn and the dairy and the wheat, um, that it's hidden. I mean, that's a whole new episode and a different, but really on a personal level, it's stop buying the products. If there's not a demand, they'll stop making. And that's what we got to kind of remember is that they think that there's a demand right now for all these sugary stuff. But if we start pulling back as a collective, there's not going to be that demand. And they're going to start going, hey, well, what's going on here? So I think those are the two big things is stop buying the products that are full of sugar laden and then writing to your politicians, governor, senator, um, to say, hey, we need to change how our food is.
Yeah, the first step would be acknowledging that there's a problem out there, and we get it, right? Like everyone, we get it. It's so good, it's so safe, it's so comforting, and that's why they call it comfort food.
Yes.
But the first big question should always be, if it's so good for yourself, why are all these other issues happening?
Yeah.
And if you want to have something else, why is it so much more expensive? And why do you have to seem to like dig for it? Like for me to give up meat, for example, is not easy. It's probably easier now because it's cool and everyone has tofu and all this other stuff. But if I wanted to, like when I stop having sugar consistently, it wasn't easy just because it is in your face, right? And some people don't necessarily have the willpower, right? Like, especially as I look at the world today, it can look so sad and so down. And
Yeah.
the way food is marketed to you is that, you know what, Samantha, you can eat your problems away. Here's a chocolate bar.
Exactly. Yeah.
Here's some ice cream, right? Like the
Hungry,
answer
have a
to
Snickers.
exactly, right? Like the answer to all your problems, world hunger, depression, divorce, everything is in your fridge,
Yep.
right? And it's not the vegetables, it's not the carrots, it's not that.
Yeah.
It's go in your freezer. Let me get some chocolate. That chocolate cake. You know,
Yes.
I remember the last time I had a chocolate cake and I ate a piece of it. And all of a sudden I felt this rush. I was like, no, 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 no more.
Yep. That's the spike in the dopamine. When you get in a rush like that, that's a spike in the dopamine. And that's part of the reward system in our brain. And that's what makes it more addictive because the dopamine lights up more than what cocaine does. So it's quite scary.
It is. It is. Like I'm so glad that it takes discipline. It
Yes.
really does take discipline. And sometimes some people may look at it and be like, oh, that's silly, it's food. I was like, you'll be surprised how many how food can at least temporarily satisfy or solve your problems because you just focus on what you're doing, and that's consuming. And to your point,
Yes.
right, you can consume and consume and consume,
Hmm.
and we don't eat to survive, we eat to be over full,
Yes.
which was never the case, right? It was just there's a hunger, you eat to satisfy the hunger, and off you go. Now we eat to be bloated. Like we eat to
Yeah.
we can't even move. We eat to fall asleep.
Yep. Part of the Clean Plate Club, and that's part of another generational food story that has been passed down. I know I was a part of it, and I've caught myself a couple of times telling my kids, and I'm like, oh, hold on. They really don't need, if you're not hungry, why do you keep eating? Why do you keep consuming? And, I've been telling that to my kiddos, and my oldest has finally gotten it. And so now she'll be like, Mom, you say that it's good, but why do you keep eating it if you're full? I'm like, okay, she's telling me my own words here.
So, Samantha, as we close, what final words do you want to share with our audience today to help keep them aware of the dangers of sugar and how they can prevent themselves from falling into the trap of it?
It's just really starting to be mindful. What are you picking up off the shelf? Is it, start looking at how to read the ingredients. How much sugar is actually in your food that you just grabbed off that shelf? Um, you know, it's in your jellies, it's in everything, and you don't really think about it. You just, oh, I've gotten this before, I've gotten that before. I dare you to stop when you grab that item and turn it around and look at that nutrition fact, because that's very telling of how much sugar you're actually consuming and you don't even think of it.